I have people coming up to me all the time, and they tell me, wow, WeedGeist was really good. I really enjoyed it. Oh, well, thank you. Man, can you really make a car out of hemp? Yeah, in fact, you can. In Canada, there's a few. Man, can legalizing marijuana and hemp really save the U.S. government billions? Yes, it's estimated that you can save about $13 million just in ending the enforcement and legalizing it alone. Now that might not seem like much, but once we start an industry for it, then the possibilities are endless and money will be flowing in. Not to mention that we would be the top of the market. I then ask these same people, do you vote? Well, no, my vote doesn't really count anyway. Okay. Do you buy hemp products or promote its farming? Well, no, that's a lot of hard work. Yeah, kind of is. Are you active in legalizing marijuana? Do you write your senators? Do you write your state governments? Do you write your federal governments? Well, no, that's a lot of time. It is time consuming. Do you smoke marijuana? Oh, fuck yeah, I love that shit. I smoke it every day. Then what fucking good are you to me, yourself, the government, or the people?
These high school boys and girls are having a hop at the local soda fountain. Innocently they dance. Innocent of a new and deadly menace lurking behind closed doors. Marijuana, the burning weed with its roots in hell. In this film, you will see the ease with which this vicious plant can be grown in your neighbor's yard, rolled into harmless-looking cigarettes, hidden in an innocent shoe or watch case.
If you want a good smoke, try one of these.
You will meet Bill, who once took pride in his strong will as he takes the first step toward enslavement.
Of course, if you're afraid.
Smoking the soul-destroying reefer, they find a moment's pleasure, but at a terrible price. Debauchery, violence, murder, suicide, and the ultimate end of the marijuana addict. Hopeless insanity. See this important film now, before it is too late.
So you yourself smoke marijuana? No, I don't just smoke it, I use it. And you're proud of this? I'm not proud, nor am I ashamed. I enjoy it. I connect with it naturally, like my endocannabinoid system tells me to do. And honestly, why the fuck does anyone else care? People have lost this real sense of rights, nature, and privacy. When I use marijuana, I'm in control of my own consciousness. And when you tell me I can't use marijuana, then you're trying to control my consciousness, and then we have a major problem, and violence may occur. Whereas if you just kept your goddamn mouth shut and worry about your own self and family and desires, no one goes home with an uncomfortable object embedded in their neck, you dig? Humans have openly used, grew, ate, and wore hemp and marijuana for over 10,000 years. Since before the day that Christ was said to exist. It was durable, and practically all cloth was made from it. Hell, canvas literally means cannabis. That's how the Dutch pronounced it, canvas. And it was hemp that sailed our white asses over to this country. We fed and medicated whole countries with hemp and cannabis. It is so embedded into our history until the early 20th century that it's as if we have a natural instinct to use it. And now people are being imprisoned for life and even sentenced to death for having it in places like Abu Dhabi. You know, what the fuck is that? That's just silly. Yet we have the mega powerful Vatican pushing fiction to control minds and helping cover up and protect the peddlers who like to stick their dicks into 10-year-olds. And that's accepted over a natural plant that can just possibly cure cancer? If that's not a goddamn conspiracy, I'll crawl back up into my mother and tell her to try again.
Marijuana. The very mention of this plant strikes fear into millions. In the eyes of the media brainwashed, weed has become the new devil, the worst thing to hit America since H.H. Holmes. The Green Menace. However, its factual track record is anything but negative. But try telling that to the federal and corporate fat cats who continue to waste billions trying to convince the public that it's the green plague and that it's dangerous. Over the years, the powers that be have spent just as much and made more of an effort to invoke fear over this plant as they have with cancer, AIDS, and the word terrorism. A green bin Laden, possibly hiding under your teenager's bed. Marijuana is the problem, and not those who send our children to die for primitive energy sources. The common sense truth is, marijuana is less harmful than pillow fights at a slumber party. And even as overly ridiculous as parents are nowadays about child safety, I think that we can all agree that slumber party pillow fights shouldn't be prohibited. Marijuana is grossly safer than alcohol, and let's be honest, it's more fun too. It can be used for clothes, foods, plastics, colognes, housing, fiberglasses, cars, lubricants, fuels. It's pathetic just how long this list can go on. Since marijuana was prohibited in 1937, approximately half of the world's forests have been cut down to make paper, and we're wasting paper like crazy. I've done my share just writing this documentary alone. If marijuana and hemp were legal, most of these forests can still be standing. Our paper would be more durable, more biodegradable, we could produce more of it, and faster and cheaper. We could literally waste it for the sake of wasting it with no repercussion on the environment. And the medical and cosmetic uses are staggering, from treating cancer to obesity, and colognes to anti-aging. Hemp and marijuana has us covered. It's even effective for newly common problems such as ADD, ADHD, bipolar disorder, and autism. Marijuana would be a physician's desk reference by itself, and even the cover and the pages could be made from it. If there is a God, then the cannabis plant was a gift handed to us by him, and it's just begging for us to use it. But still, it's illegal, and since its prohibition, the world of goods, medicine, industry, and freedom has come crashing down around us. Why keep it illegal when the people want it? There's a market for it, and it just makes so much sense to legalize it. What are the feds getting out of it? What do they hope to accomplish? What is the end game?
Marijuana History 101. Or should I say extremely brief Marijuana History 101. It's big, complicated, and we'll only be able to scratch the surface. So let's get started. The first thing that strikes one as odd when looking at the history of marijuana, which is also known as cannabis, is how very much legal it once was. In fact, it wasn't only legal, it just happened to be one of the largest agricultural crops in the world, including the United States. You see, cannabis can also be hemp. And just what is hemp? Well, it's by and large the most robust, durable, natural soft fiber on the face of this planet. Up until 1883, and for thousands of years before, cannabis hemp was the largest agricultural crop in the world. It had thousands of uses and products. The majority of fabric, lighting oil, medicines, paper, and fiber came from hemp. The first marijuana law to exist in the United States was a law ordering farmers to grow hemp. Benjamin Franklin used it to start one of America's first paper mills. The first two copies of the Declaration of Independence were written on cannabis hemp paper. Up until the 1800s, most of the textiles in the United States were made with hemp. 50% of medicine marketed in the last half of the 19th century was made from cannabis. Even Queen Victoria used the resin extracts from cannabis to alleviate her menstrual cramps. But the funny thing about industrial hemp was you couldn't get high from it. Yet, it was lumped in with the following, which also made little sense. Reefer madness. In the early 20th century, yellow journalism had surfaced. Articles depicted blacks and Mexicans as frenzied beasts who would smoke marijuana, play devil's music, and heap disrespect and viciousness on the readership, a majority of which happened to be white. Some offenses included looking at a white woman twice, laughing at a white person, or even stepping on white men's shadows. And this ended up leading to a law in the form of a tax stamp. A tax stamp that would not only include marijuana, but also hemp and cannabis medicines. It's speculated that hemp's potential for an abundance of new products was going to be in direct competition with other sources. And this, added to the reefer madness, led to the eventual downfall of all forms of cannabis. Popular Mechanics magazine had actually prepared an article entitled New Billion-Dollar Crop. Hemp was touted as being able to produce more than 5,000 textile products from its thread-like fiber and more than 25,000 products from its cellulose, ranging from dynamite to cellophane. Its superiority as a source for paper was also becoming known, especially with the development of hemp processing equipment. Now, the new Marijuana Tax Act was all fine and dandy, except for one thing. If you wanted to grow hemp, you needed to buy a stamp, but they weren't giving any out to anybody. And so, in effect, all forms of cannabis became illegal. Things pretty much stayed that way until World War II, when the government decided that hemp once again was a good thing and produced a video, Hemp for Victory. But by the time the war was over, hemp again became bad. And in 1948, when the marijuana law once again came into question, Congress recognized that marijuana was made illegal for the wrong reason. It didn't make people violent at all. It made them pacifists. The communists would use it to weaken America's will to fight. Congress now voted to keep marijuana illegal for the exact opposite reason they had outlawed it in the first place. And all through the years, report after report, commissioned by everybody, from the mayor of New York to the president of the United States, has come back with the view that marijuana should have no criminal penalty attached to it. Yet, marijuana remains as illegal today as it did nearly 70 years ago.
Cannabis, obviously a natural product of great interest because it's one of the most widely used illicit drugs in the world, probably the most widely used illicit drug in the world, and it has been in use for many, many thousands of years. Probably every single language, every single piece of evidence that we have about drugs will mention cannabis.
Cannabis was introduced in 1860. It fell out of use. 1942 was actually physically removed from the pharmacopoeia. Around 1930, it would have been about 20 pages in the pharmacopoeia on the use of cannabis.
As you first enter into the DEA Museum's permanent exhibit on the history of drugs in America, you'll encounter a series of artifact cases feature patent medicines. These are products that contained opium, morphine, cocaine, and cannabis, and were seen as the wonder miracle drugs of the day.
So all these bottles are right about from 1890 to 1938, and there's a variety of different cures. This is an interesting one. Pink-coated tablets is for sexual exhaustion. Cannabis for sexual exhaustion, big pink tablets. What does it sound like? You know, maybe the Viagra of the day. And here's a chlorodyne. It's another pain medicine with cannabis and morphine in a tablet.
Drug law enforcement began in this country. It was under the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Harry Anslinger was the commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics for actually 32 years, from 1930 to 1962. And under his supervision, the FBN went after organizations that were beginning to traffic in quantities of drugs that were beyond what was legally permitted.
I was shocked that what had happened is the people who had decided that marijuana was a very harmful drug had taken the field from science, from what was actually in the scientific and medical literature, and physicians became ignorant about cannabis. The American Medical Association threw in its hat with the Federal Bureau of Narcotics in about 1945, and physicians became not only victims of this propaganda campaign, but very effective agents. I mean, after all, we are physicians, we know about drugs and so forth.
The substances in the cannabis plant which are active are kind of fatty-like, lipid-like, and they're hard to work with. So it has been very hard for chemists to get a handle on these kind of substances. Therefore, it took until 1964 for Raphael Mechoulam and his colleague Edry to discover the active compound in the cannabis plant, which they called then delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or as we know it, THC.
We had this new phenomenology back in the late 60s where all these kids were smoking marijuana, and this was something new. How did this drug use impact upon their functionality, their adaptation, their success or failure? Were there any physiological consequences, any negative outcomes? Nobody knew. So we did a National Institute of Mental Health funded longitudinal drug research program from 1968 through 1972 approximately. We had a random and a representative sample of 10% of the entering freshman class at UCLA. The conclusion was that it was certainly a physiologically, medically speaking, a safe recreational drug compared to almost everything else. And as it turns out, that it had a lot of medicinal applications.
As we see it from a typical psychiatric...
I'm a psychiatrist, professor emeritus at UCLA Medical Center. I've been there since 1962 and working since 1965 in the drug abuse field. I had a chance to serve on President Nixon's National Commission on Marijuana and Drug Abuse for 2 years.
If you had a substance like this that had these effects, I feel quite confident that there'd be a move to put it on a prescription basis, a controlled medical basis, in which the issue would depend on what the benefit was to the user.
We didn't find a lot of side effects that were problems from marijuana, and we were very encouraged by what we saw, but somewhat dismayed by some of the responses that we got from other researchers. One researcher, for example, would say that in his studies, marijuana caused central nervous system toxicity and therefore shouldn't be allowed to be used by anybody. When we pressured him to say what he meant by central nervous system toxicity, which is a scary word, he said, I mean drowsiness.
The greatest harm did not derive from any inherent psychopharmacological effect of the substance, but rather from the way we as a society were treating it.
Some people call me patient zero. I was the first individual in the United States to gain medical access to marijuana. I have glaucoma, and in the mid-1970s and 1975, I was arrested for growing 4 marijuana plants. I had accidentally discovered marijuana was helpful in treating my glaucoma, and shortly after I was arrested, I discovered that the U.S. government also knew that marijuana was helpful in the treatment of glaucoma. They just hadn't bothered to mention it in public.
It goes back to the 70s when Robert Randall went to federal court and got the judge to give him a medical necessity defense.
So I went through a number of research programs and argued before the criminal court that any person who was sane, who knew they were going blind, and who knew that marijuana could help to prolong their sight, would break the law in order to obtain marijuana. The judge concluded that it was correct that any sane person would break the law in order to save their own eyesight, and I was found not guilty.
And that was how the compassionate investigative new drug program got started, under which eventually several dozen patients, and it's now about 8, are actually provided with free marijuana by the federal government.
The brown prescription bottle comes in the form of pre-rolled cigarettes. It's grown on a small farm in Mississippi. The marijuana is actually provided to me in large cookie tins, which contain approximately 300 pre-rolled marijuana cigarettes. And I receive a tin of that size on a monthly basis. So I've been a steady consumer of federal marijuana for about 22 years now.
We welcome to Larry King Live, Bob Randall, the first American ever to gain legal access to marijuana because of his glaucoma condition. Why are you allowed to use these, Robert?
I have a disease called glaucoma, and marijuana at this point is the only drug that will help prolong my sight.
You could smoke it now legally, couldn't you?
Sure.
Do it for me.
Okay.
Yes.
This is a first.
I want you to know, Larry.
I spent 27 years with Bob Randall, and 25 of those years he was using 10 marijuana cigarettes a day, federally supplied. And I can assure you he was not a stoner. He had a terrific memory. He was extremely articulate. He was highly motivated when it came to, particularly to this issue.
I think the only thing surprising here is that a small group of unelected bureaucrats have so long resisted making marijuana medically available. Essentially, it comes down to almost a theologic argument. They want to pretend that marijuana is simply evil, and I think we have to be more rational than that. We have to realize that marijuana has good and bad uses.
Illness has no ideology. I mean, conservatives get cancer, liberals get cancer. Disease is ubiquitous. But treatment does have ideologies. The ideology of Western treatment is synthesis. Nothing from nature can be trusted unless it's passed through the hands of a scientist who's artificially manipulated it and then sold the product to someone who's going to own it and manufacture it. That's an ideology, and it's very deeply ingrained. A product like marijuana is offensive in almost every way to that concept of industrial medicine. It's naturally occurring, it's inexpensive, and even though the relief it provides is better, faster, safer, it simply doesn't fit the industrial format that FDA is designed to protect.
Now, when it comes to medical marijuana, I have more of a practical view than anything else. I mean, my attitude is that if it's an issue of doctors prescribing medical marijuana as a treatment for glaucoma or as a cancer treatment, I think that should be appropriate, because there really is no difference between that and a doctor prescribing morphine or anything else. I think there are legitimate concerns in not wanting to allow people to grow their own or start setting up mom and pop shops, because at that point it becomes fairly difficult to regulate. And you know, again, I'm not familiar with all the details of the initiative that was passed and what safeguards there were in place, but I think the basic concept that using medical marijuana in the same way with the same controls as other drugs prescribed by doctors, I think that's entirely appropriate.
Federal law, of course, still considers it a controlled substance, right. And there have been attempts from Washington to punish doctors.
Yeah, I mean, I would not punish doctors if it's prescribed in a way that is appropriate. That may require some changes in federal law. I will tell you that, you know, I mean, I want to be honest with you, whether I want to use a whole lot of political capital on that issue when we're trying to get health care passed or end the war in Iraq is, you know, the likelihood of that being real high on my list is not likely.
But it's safe to say you wouldn't be.
What I'm not going to be doing is using Justice Department resources to try to circumvent state laws on this issue, simply because I want folks to be investigating violent crimes and potential terrorism. We've got a lot of things for our law enforcement officers to deal with.
Michael Oliveri starts every day with a nauseous stomach and a hit of marijuana. The nausea comes from decades of medical treatments for his muscular dystrophy. The weed comes from California.
Down.
Any water in here?
Last year, Michael moved from New Jersey to California so he could legally access medical marijuana. He says it's the best medication he's found for his constant pain and nausea. But until New Jersey makes it legal, visits like these, for his sister's wedding, won't come often.
Not every medication works for everybody, and medical marijuana is just another option. For people who are finding relief from marijuana, they're living in fear of prosecution because they're forced to break the law to access the medicine that best relieves their suffering.
There's bipartisan support for a medical marijuana bill in New Jersey, but there's also controversy. People who are against the bill say it's a thinly veiled effort to legalize drugs for recreational use, and the lawmakers are falling for it.
They are basically using sick people to further their agenda of drug legalization. They use the word compassion a lot. And nobody can be against compassion. I'm certainly not against compassion. But this is not compassionate. This is allowing an untested medication to be used by a variety of people who are sick and who might be making them sicker. Where are the studies saying what is the proper dose for seizures? And seizures are mentioned in the bill, multiple sclerosis.
I just hold it in for a few seconds. Immediately I feel it working. My eyesight gets better, my pain gets less, and my balance improves 100%.
Many patients use a vaporizer to inhale the marijuana because it doesn't have the harmful effects of smoking. The vapor is odorless and delivers a concentrated hit of THC. That's the active ingredient in marijuana.
When I exhale, it's like the pain is going out. And then I do another puff, and I hold it, because that's what they tell you, and then I exhale. And then, in the beginning, when I first do it, I can stand up, I can walk without pain, I can bend over and pick up things. You know, I have MS, I still have the dead leg that I'm dragging around, I still have feet that don't work. But I feel fantastic at first because it just kind of leaves my body. And then slowly over the next couple of hours, it starts to creep back in again.
People like Chuck and Nancy say it's terrifying to buy marijuana illegally. But they take the risk because the payoff is worth it. After inhaling marijuana, he enjoy time with his family and play with his daughters.
See, with kids, there's a lot to do. Thank God I'm medicated, because I'd be out here shaking doing this.
It's hard not to be swayed by stories like these. And the people who oppose medical marijuana, they're the first to admit it. David Evans is a cancer survivor. And though he's never used medical marijuana, he did support it at first. But after researching the dangers, he feels people are basing their decisions on emotions, not facts. Because the FDA hasn't tested it.
Individual patients may honestly believe that it's helpful to them. God bless them. I know what it's like to get a diagnosis and to be afraid that you're going to die. I understand that. I've been in a cancer ward. I've had surgery, radiation. I get that, okay? People need to look beyond the initial compassion argument and look at what is true compassion. True compassion is giving people safe medicines.
I've tried morphine derivatives. They make me very nauseous. The codeine derivatives, they bind me.
The medication will shorten a person's temper, and when you add antidepressants to it, it can give you an explosive temper.
See, the thing about marijuana, there's no side effects. I don't even get stoned. If that's a side effect, I don't know if that's bad. I suppose it's good. A lot of people like it.
You don't want it to be a stony kind of like, dude, like, I can't do anything, man, like, you don't want to be like that. You want to actually be like a normal person.
Can it help some people? There's no doubt in my mind. There may be a handful within this state that could benefit from it. However, you're creating an entire industry for those few people. I wish somebody would come up with a bill that would target simply those people, because it's unfortunate that This bill is being sponsored by the people who are interested in opening a door to legalization in New Jersey.
I would ask the advocates of this, why not go through the FDA process? What are you afraid of?
I'd love that. But the FDA, the federal government, is like not touching it.
The states are, grounds for social policy change, and we're trying to send a message to the federal government that says you do need to address this, you do need to do more research. 13 states have already done this and sent a message saying, we're going to treat sick and dying people with the compassion they deserve, and if this is the medicine that best relieves their suffering, why not?
But people say dispensaries like this one in California are the reason why not. They say the law is wildly abused and has basically legalized marijuana for everyone.
I use medical marijuana because I have arthritic gout. I have a very high uric acid count.
I broke my leg a long time ago in a car accident.
Here's the thing, though. With quantity comes quality. Patients say California growers have perfected strains that target different symptoms.
Physical pain, anxiety, sleeping disorder.
It's funny going from the streets to having it in a store now, you know what I mean? It's just, the transition is kind of, it feels funny, but this is the closest we've ever seen it to being legal in my life, you know what I mean?
Eventually, the whole United States is going to turn into like California. We're just leading the process, and New Jersey will be another state that transfers to legalizing marijuana.
But where will all these dispensaries be located? Would you want to live next door?
You can see, compared to this truck, these plants are 6 feet tall, 3, 4, 5 feet wide. Yeah, I wouldn't like to have marijuana growing operations in my neighborhood.
Wherever these dispensaries have popped up in the past, in the states that have allowed it, crime has increased. And when crime increases in a particular area, the quality of life goes down. People are robbed. There's street around these facilities. It creates an excessive burden on law enforcement.
The New Jersey bill is dramatically different from the California law. Our law would actually be the most restrictive law in the country when it comes to who would be able to access marijuana, how much marijuana would they be able to access.
But it's not enough for anti-drug activists. They say pot can be a gateway drug for kids, and legalizing it for medical reasons is going to send the wrong message. Kids will think the drug is harmless, or even a good thing, and they'll be attracted to the popular edible candy products.
This is medicinal peanut butter. This is Butterfinger. These all look like candy bars. Mr. Greenbud candy bar. This is medical marijuana.
Those pictures are really just scare tactics. There is no evidence to show that marijuana use among youth has increased, even in states which have medical marijuana laws. That's just not the case.
I mean, I could abuse Percocet. They can't stop me. I could go to my doctor and say, oh, Percocet helps me so much, can I have a script? And they'll give me a script just like that. And I can fill it and abuse it and fill it and abuse it and go on and on and on and literally.
I've been to a zillion doctors, and it's just been I've been a guinea pig for a lot of different things. And I'm way too tired, and I have no tolerance and no patience for any law that doesn't make any sense, especially when there's alcohol abuse and tobacco abuse and pharmaceutical drug abuse. I will not participate in that. No, I won't die for that.
I live in a state that has no medical marijuana protection. I was I'm born with cerebral palsy, which most noticeably manifests itself in a severe stutter, and the right side of my body is much noticeably weaker than my left. I have The stutter has got to be one of the most stigmatizing disabilities invented by God. It's very humiliating. My right arm is always very painfully tense. I went through my entire childhood in pain because I couldn't move my muscles. The first time I realized that cannabis helped me was the first time I smoked it. It's been 3 days since I smoked. I am hoping to find something in Kansas City. I smoke to be the mother my children deserve because they're really cool kids. I'm in downtown Kansas City looking for cannabis.
Why?
Because I hate the way that I stutter, and it's the most effective treatment that I've found. If I were to get busted buying or smoking marijuana, there's a possibility that I could lose my children.
That it's worth that risk?
I wouldn't be half the mother without it, because I would just be in way too much pain. So yeah, being a good mother to my children is the most important thing in the world to me. After about the third hit is when I began to feel the tension dissipate. It really helps my speech. I feel much calmer, much less rushed, and I feel like I can control the muscles that I couldn't control before I smoked. It's kind of nice. I don't make as many funny faces.
To other news now, his life is tough enough as it is, living with multiple sclerosis and full body paralysis. But a West Kelowna man says it's much worse now that his access to medical marijuana has been cut off and his wheelchair seized, leaving him stranded in bed for a week. But as Blaine Gaffney shows us, Interior Health is defending the actions taken at an Okanagan care home.
He can do little except watch TV. Niall Nagy lives at the Brookhaven care home, but he says it's like a prison, where the manager has handed him a 7-day bed sentence.
She sent two men over here to take my wheelchair and tell me that I got to stay in this bed for 7 days.
As punishment?
Yeah, as a punishment, yeah.
Nagy suffers from multiple sclerosis, most of his body paralyzed. He says he has a license from the federal government to smoke marijuana for medical reasons.
To get rid of my pain and my spasms. That's the only 2 reasons I smoke it.
Nagy says he would trundle up the driveway in his electric wheelchair up here to the road, well away from any non-smoking areas, to smoke his marijuana. But he says the manager of Brookhaven doesn't like him smoking marijuana.
She told me that their rules are that they don't believe in that.
In that using marijuana?
In using marijuana to help multiple sclerosis or anything. They consider marijuana as a dangerous narcotic like cocaine.
And so Nagy says his wheelchair was taken away for a week, leaving him bedridden.
Well, I'm going to be all full of bed sores, I can tell you that much, because what happens is my diaper gets full of feces and urine, and I'll be like that for 7 days.
Please turn that off.
The manager of Brookhaven isn't answering questions.
Mr. Nagy is under a physician's care, and it's confidential and private.
So
please leave.
So you're not taking his chair away because you don't agree with him smoking medical marijuana?
I have no comment.
So you say the doctor took his wheelchair away for 7 days?
Excuse me. I am having no comment.
But is it your philosophical reasons about marijuana that you're putting that guy in a chair, bed for 7 days?
There's no comment. Sorry. No comment.
But isn't that cruel punishment?
Please leave. The case is under review at this point in time.
Officials with Interior Health are reluctant to discuss individual cases, but hint the wheelchair was taken away for safety reasons.
If there is a pattern of behaviors or a pattern of misuse of a motorized chair that puts others at risk.
But Nagy says confiscating his wheelchair just isn't fair.
No, not very fair at all. They figure they have more power than the federal government.
And Nagy says when he can't smoke marijuana, he suffers the consequences.
With all this stress that's been going through, it makes it even worse. My MS to come on even 10 times stronger.
In West Kelowna, Blaine Gaffney, CHBC News.
And Niall Nagy complains the care home manager earlier seized his package of medical marijuana when it was couriered from a government supplier. Nagy says she only gave it back when he threatened to complain to police.
This amendment is a simple limitation that would prevent the Justice Department from using any of the funds appropriated to it by this bill to interfere with the implementation of state laws that allow for the use of marijuana for medicinal purposes under the supervision of a licensed physician.
From a legal standpoint, and embarrassing from a body that should be upholding the laws of the United States, that should be fighting the terrorism on our streets where people are dying, and here we are trying to give them cover for this pro-drug movement by acting like it's medicine. It is not medicine. If you believe in the medicine, get it out of the marijuana and into the people who need it. Don't hide behind marijuana, and make it more available so more kids can die in my district and in your districts as well. I yield back.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from New York.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Paul.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remark.
Without objection, so ordered.
As a co-sponsor of the amendment, I rise in support of this amendment and appreciate the fact that the gentleman from New York has brought it to the floor. I would suggest that the previous speaker has forgotten some of the law, and to me that would be the constitutional law of the 9th and 10th Amendment. So changing the law is one thing, but remembering the Constitution is another. And this has a lot to do with state law, but more importantly, as a physician, I see this bill as something dealing with compassion. As a physician, I have seen those who have died with cancer and getting chemotherapy and with AIDS and having nothing help them. There's the case in California of Peter McDaniels, who was diagnosed with cancer and AIDS. California changed the law and permitted him to use marijuana if it was self-grown, and he was using it. And yet, although he was dying, the federal court came in and arrested, the federal officials came in and arrested him, and he was taken to court. And the terrible irony of this was, here was a man that was dying, and the physicians were not giving him any help. And when he was tried, it was not allowed to be said that he was obeying the state law. That's how far the 9th and 10th Amendment has been undermined, that there has been so much usurpation of states' rights and states' ability to manage these affairs. And that's why the founders set the system up this way, in order that if there is a mistake, it's not monolithic. And believe me, the federal government has made a mistake, not only here with marijuana, with all the drug laws. Let me tell you, there are more people who die from the use of legal drugs than illegal drugs. And just think of that. More people die from the use of legal drugs. And also, there are more deaths from the drug war than there are from deaths from using the illegal drugs. So it has gotten out of control. But the whole idea that a person who is dying, a physician can't even prescribe something that might help them. The terrible irony of Peter McDaniels was that he died because of vomiting, something that could have and had only been curtailed by the use of marijuana. No other medication had helped. And we, a federal government, go in there and deny this and defy the state law. The state law of California. Yes, I would grant you, there's danger in all medications. There's some danger in marijuana, but I don't know of any deaths that is purely marijuana related. If you want to talk about a deadly medication or a deadly drug that kills literally tens of thousands in this country, it's alcohol. And how many people want to go prohibition? I mean, nobody's proposing that. And yet that is the deadly drug. The whole notion that we would suggest that the states can use
recognized for 1 additional minute.
The whole idea that we can deny this right to the states to allow a little bit of compassion for a patient that is dying. I would say this is a compassionate vote. If you care about people being sick, you have to vote for this amendment. This will do nothing to increase the use of bad drugs. The bad drugs are there, and as a physician and a parent and a grandparent, I preach against it all the time. But you know, the unwise use of drugs is a medical problem, just like alcoholism is a medical problem. But we've turned this into a monster to the point where we won't even allow a person dying from cancer and AIDS to get a little bit of relief. I strongly urge a support and a positive vote for this amendment. Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from Virginia, yields back his time. All time has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New York. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Euthanasia isn't legal in this country. It's some taboo subject for some god-awful reason. Now, if you ask me, Dr. Jack Kevorkian was a godsend, helping those relieve a pain that makes torture look like a release, a pain the rest of us sure as shit hope to never face. But he's categorized as a serial killer. That's how sick we've all become. But a green plant is categorized as the devil here. Disney can sell sex to my 9-year-old. NAMLA can try to justify raping my 9-year-old. But if my dying grandmother sparks up a joint, she faces prison and gets denied treatment. Who's the real devil in this equation? Marijuana, with all its benefits, is evil. And the right thing to do is suffer and use pharmaceuticals that harm other organs and come with a list of side effects. But marijuana is Satan. I think it's funny that the devil was the only one who wants to help here. I had a friend on his deathbed, horrible situation. All he wanted was some weed to make his journey to death a bit more bearable. He even told his nurse. She casually ignored the request and told him, "You don't want that." I had to defend him. I said, "Yes, he does. He should get whatever he wants. The bill's paid. Give him meth if that's what he wants." The nurse replied, "He's already fighting a losing battle. There's no cure for his situation. Do you really want him to become a drug addict on top of all of that?" "Lady, he's dying. Who gives a fuck?"
Staring at the sea, will she come? Is there hope for me after all is said and done? Anything at any price, all of this for you, all the spoils of a wasted life, all of this for you. Tired faith on
die. Right now I weigh less than 80 pounds. I have all my life. I have support of 5 of my doctors saying that I am living proof that medical marijuana works. I am completely against legalizing it for everyone, but there is medical purpose for it.
And you have synthetic marijuana that's available and other pain medications.
It makes me sick. I have tried it and it makes me throw up. I have tried all the medications there are and all the forms that come in, appetite stimulators or steroids. I have muscular dystrophy. That's completely against my DNA.
I'm sorry to hear that.
My question for you is, will you arrest me and my doctors if I get medical marijuana?
I'm not in favor of medical marijuana being
will
legal
you
in the
have
country.
me arrested?
How are you?
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Will you please answer my question?
Will you have it? Wait,
Governor.
are you not going to answer this question, Governor?
I think I have. I'm not in favor of legalizing medical marijuana.
He asked if you were going to arrest patients like him, Governor.
Nice to see you.
You're going to just ignore a person in a wheelchair?
Hi, how are you? I spoke with him.
So you actually use marijuana every day?
Every single day, and I will do so every day until the day I drop dead.
Before you came to the Capitol?
Yes.
Rights. Boy, everyone in this country is always running around yammering about their fucking rights. I have a right, you have no right, we have a right, they don't have a right. Folks, I hate to spoil your fun, but there's no such thing as rights, okay? They're imaginary. We made them up, like the boogeyman. The Three Little Pigs, Pinocchio, Mother Goose, shit like that. Rights are an idea. They're just imaginary. They're a cute idea. Cute. But that's all. Cute and fictional. But if you think you do have rights, let me ask you this. Where do they come from? People say, well, they come from God. They're God-given rights. Oh, fuck, here we go again. Here we go again. The God excuse, the last refuge of a man with no answers and no argument. It came from God. Anything we can't describe must have come from God. Personally, folks, I believe that if your rights came from God, He would have given you the right to some food every day, and He would have given you the right to a roof over your head. God would have been looking out for you. God would have been looking out for you. You know that? He wouldn't have been worried about making sure you have a gun so you can get drunk on Sunday night and kill your girlfriend's parents. But let's say it's true. Let's say God gave us these rights. Why would He give us a certain number of rights? The Bill of Rights in this country has 10 stipulations, okay? 10 rights. And apparently God was doing sloppy work that week because we've had to amend the Bill of Rights an additional 17 times. So God forgot a couple of things like slavery. Just fucking slipped his mind. But let's say God gave us the original 10. He gave the British 13. The British Bill of Rights has 13 stipulations. The Germans have 29. The Belgians have 25. The Swedish have only 6. And some people in the world have no rights at all. What kind of a fucking goddamn God-given deal is that? No rights at all? Why would God give different people in different countries different numbers of different rights? Boredom? Amusement? Bad arithmetic? Do we find out at long last after all this time that God is weak in math skills? Doesn't sound like divine planning to me. Sounds more like human planning. Sounds more like one group trying to control another group. In other words, business as usual in America. Now, if you think you do have rights, one last assignment for you. Next time you're at the computer, get on the internet, go to Wikipedia. When you get to Wikipedia, in the search field for Wikipedia, I want you to type in Japanese Americans 1942, and you'll find out all about your precious fucking rights, okay? All right. You know about it. You know about it. Yeah. In 1942, there were 110,000 Japanese American citizens in good standing, law-abiding people who were thrown into internment camps simply because their parents were born in the wrong country. That's all they did wrong. They had no right to a lawyer, no right to a fair trial, no right to a jury of their peers, no right to due process of any kind. The only right they had, right this way, into the internment camps. Just when these American citizens needed their rights the most, their government took them away. And rights aren't rights if someone can take them away. They're privileges. That's all we've ever had in this country is a bill of temporary privileges. And if you read the news even badly, you know that every year the list gets shorter and shorter and shorter. You see how sooner or later?